Let's talk more to the DA's Dr. Leon Schreiber about the case that the party has brought against the ANC's cadre deployment policy. A very good evening to you, Doctor. We'll bring you up shortly. There you go. Good to have you on News at Prime. First things first, explain to South Africans who've not been following this why this is an issue, a policy of another party that you feel as the DA you've now had to take all the way to the High Court.
Good evening, Tembekile. Good to be with you again. So this particular issue, as you say, has been really one that we've been focused on for a while now. The essence of the case we are making today and the reason for this court challenge is because we believe that the evidence that has emerged over the last couple of years about how the cadre deployment system operates is actually in violation of the law. And we specifically trace it back to the Constitution, which makes it very clear in sections 195 and 197 that the public service, the public administration should be non-partisan, and specifically that people who work or apply to work in the public administration should not be prejudiced or advantaged on the basis of political considerations. And of course, this coupled with the evidence that has emerged through the cadre deployment minutes that we released last year, as well as the finding from the Zondo Commission, which really underscores the unconstitutionality of this practice in our view, is the basis of the case that we are making in the High Court in Pretoria.
So how should then, in the DA's mind, a governing party make appointments to strategic positions in particular, if not based on people from within its own ranks or those who are like-minded to head up departments, head up utilities?
Well, the rather boring answer to that perhaps is to just follow what the law already says. So another way to look at this case is to actually view it as one that is designed to enforce what the Public Service Act and many other legal instruments already say about selection processes. So the Constitution and the Public Service Act makes it clear that every application must be considered equally. And it outlines a process of selection panels that can involve external experts. It can also involve, for example, the relevant minister, and that this panel must apply its mind in a non-partisan way, in a non-biased way, and fairly assess applicants to try and find the most qualified and skilled person. So what cadre deployment does, it actually circumvents that process and, as one of our legal representatives put it today, enables the ANC to kind of whisper into the ear of the decision maker and in that sense undermine the rights of the applicants in that process.
And the party's position has been that the deployment committee recommends people but does not force the appointment of specific individuals. So why is that not enough?
Yes, that's a really fascinating part of the arguments, and this case continues tomorrow, so it'll be really interesting to hear how that progresses. But one of the fundamental pieces of evidence that comes out from the minutes, from the Zondo Commission, and I think most crucially from the ANC's affidavit themselves in this case, is that if a member of the ANC, let's take for example a minister, does not follow the so-called recommendation of the deployment committee, in other words, they might appoint someone else through a selection process who is more qualified, then the deployment committee can actually hold that person accountable. It can institute disciplinary steps. It could theoretically even recall that person from office. And that, in our submission to the court, is evidence of much more than recommendation. That is, in fact, dictation and, in fact, a hijacking of the appointment process.
Would that not require, though, that the very decision makers who are placed in government by the ANC then say that they were indeed coerced? What happens if they say, well, I wasn't forced, I did so of my free will because, just as the party has stated, I feel that Leon Schreiber is the most suitable candidate?
Well, I mean, if there's a selection process that has a particular outcome, then that's the ideal scenario. But unfortunately, our view is that the involvement of the deployment committee even taints the appointment of qualified people. And I think if you look at, the way that this entire, the Zondo findings, for example, focused on the role that this played in state capture, I think it has really tainted, and you see this interestingly in the new framework for professionalization of the public sector, where it says that there's huge concern from society about this practice as well. So I think you've reached a point now in the sort of story of cadre deployment where it is so fundamentally tainted that it would even bring into question the legitimacy of good appointments.
The DA, where it governs, also deploys people strategically, does it not? What's the difference between what you do and what the ANC does?
So I think a critical distinction to make here, and also just to be clear what the case is not about, is that this case is not about political office bearers. So any political position where there was an election and a particular party got a particular result is not what we are looking at. So if you think about
ministers, mayors, that
yes,
sort of thing.
Yes, all those positions, that's not what this is about. And our view is, I think every South African who is a Democrat agrees with this, that where there is a democratic outcome, that party is entitled in terms of democracy. But what our case is about is the administrative part of the state. So the professional positions, whether that's a town planner or a head of department, those are the positions in which we are saying the law does not provide for a political party to make a decision, especially a decision behind closed doors about who should occupy that position. The political party's views can be represented through the relevant minister, of course, on a selection panel, for example, but that the ultimate goal of that appointment process should be to find the best person. And I would put it to you that if you look at the ability of DA governments, for example, in the Western Cape, where this principle is respected, you see improved governance outcomes. And I think that that's where South Africa can get if we would just allow the legal system as it is currently configured to work the way it was designed in looking for the best people and not political cadres.
Once this has happened, if the ANC says to you, okay, even outside of the political office bearers, the political principals, mayors, the ministers, deputy ministers, and the rest of it, if they say to you, even in the departments, if we do have people whom we are sending there to work from our rank and file, we're only sending, for example, qualified doctors to work in the health department, would that be enough? Would that settle this matter?
I don't think so, because the critical element, if you do that, is that you are still excluding all of those who may be competent and qualified, and even more competent and qualified, from being employed in those positions. And our country desperately needs the best of the best to be in those positions. So my view on this is really, Tembekile, that you are just limiting the pool of excellence on which we need to draw if we want to fix the state going forward. And I think any limitation, if a party has 500,000 members or 1 million members, why would you limit yourself to those 500,000 people when there are 64 million South Africans who we desperately need, the qualified, competent, skilled people to help us fix the civil service? So I don't think that the maths add up on that one.
Leon Schreiber, thank you very much from the Democratic Alliance. We'll see you in court, I guess, tomorrow.